Did you know Variety, the children's charity, is the entertainment charity started by a group of show business people who found an abandoned baby in a theatre way back in 1928. These kind-hearted performers raised so much money to help the lost child that they began helping other children, and Variety, the children's charity, was born. Read the full story and support the entertainers charity that supports kids in need today. Visit variety.org.au. You're listening to the School of Hard Knock Knocks podcast with me, Maury Morgan.
Ladies and gentlemen, your next comedian.
Shouldn't drink on an empty head, you know that, don't you?
That is the shittiest heckle I have ever heard in my life.
Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
What's a bucket list?
You have dangerously underprepared yourself for the shit that is about to get real.
Peter Berner is a fine artist and stand-up comedian, but you probably recognise his name from the numerous TV shows that he's hosted, namely Backberner, The Einstein Factor, You Have Been Watching, and The B-Team with Peter Berner. His resume also boasts commercial radio. In this School of Hard Knock Knocks podcast, we discuss the journey from cartoonist to comedian, getting a break on Good News Week, pitching comedy TV shows, and joke theft. You'll also learn that all news is old news, just happening to different people. And, just a quick advertisement, the February stand-up comedy course in Melbourne is almost sold out, with only 5 spots left. So if you're interested in developing your comedy skills, or just ticking your bucket list, be sure to visit www.schoolofhardknockknocks.com right now. Or, alternatively, after my interview with Peter Berner.
All right, let's have a 20-minute friendship. Because that's about it for me. I don't like people. I don't like you. People ask, what do you value in your friends? What do you look for in friends, Pete? What do you look for? I tell you, what I look for is compatible organs. That's what I look for. If your friends aren't compatible, fuck them off. You don't need them. Have them tissue typed, get rid of them if they're not the same. It's the same, I was in Thailand and a prostitute came up and said, I'll love you long time, and I said, oh look, I can't commit to that sort of relationship. I think you're coming on too strong, you know? That's why you're scaring so many people off. I heard on the radio coming over here there's a big problem with avocados. Apparently they're costing a lot of money, the avocados. I went into a Woolies recently. You could fucking rob a bank with one of their avocados. You could. These are fucking rock hard. Back off, mate, or I'm going to fucking peg this at you. Hand over all the money or I'm chucking the avocado. It's funny, the Woolworths, people talk about, you know, the death of the corner shop and the whole duopoly of Woolworths and Coles crushing the corner shop. People go, when did that happen? When did the corner shop start disappearing? I'll tell you, like when they started to put roundabouts in everywhere, that's when they... Find out who's behind the roundabout. Fuck off the corner, fuck off the shop. Poor old Stavros comes out, whoa, how can I sell milk and newspapers, you prick? There's no corner. Sorry, mate, we're all going up the road.
Good afternoon, Peter. How are you?
Hey, Murray, I'm very, very well.
Excellent. You are in Sydney at the moment.
I am on the cusp of a heat wave. I don't know which heat wave it is, but we've had a few of them. So it's one of the many heat waves we're having this summer.
Yeah. Something, was it 47 degrees or something in Penrith? Is that right?
Something like that, record-breaking stuff. I haven't yet fried an egg on an engine block, but I'm sure it's possible.
Yeah. I get Midnight Oil music video flashbacks when I hear temperatures of that temperature. Fantastic. Well, I don't know, maybe it's in your blood, because we're going to talk about you. We're going to talk about where you come from in terms metaphorically and also in the birth sense, because you're actually born in Singapore, I believe.
I was born in Singapore in 1963. My parents lived there my mother was born in Java, my father was born in Denmark. They met in Singapore at my aunt's wedding, and they were living there. They had 2 kids, then me, and then that was about the time. About 1964, we came to Australia, and then my little sister joined the party. She was the only one of us born in Australia, so there you are. We're all paper Australians.
Huh. Good immigration advert there. Yeah, look what this guy became, and he's an immigrant. 64. If my memory serves me correctly, 65. Singapore got kicked out of the Malaysian Federation and claimed independence the following year.
Yeah, that was all part of the. I think the Singapore was changing in the early 60s, and you know, they mum and dad sat down. There was a choice. We could have gone to the UK, we could have gone back to Denmark, or we could have come to Australia. They elected to come to Australia. Mum had family here, so it sort of made sense. You know, they came here and they struck off on their own and you know, and did very well, I think. There's a couple of immigrants. Yeah.
Perfect for you. And obviously looking back at your life as an artist and a comedian and TV presenter, you've done very well. Very small market in Singapore for all those 3 things.
Yeah, it is. It's changing now, though. I've been lucky enough over the last 10 years or so to do a bit of stand-up in Singapore and through Asia and Malaysia and Borneo and Vietnam, and there is a really developing scene. Courtesy of Jonathan Atherton, who's an Aussie comic who was based there for a long time, did a lot of work with the local guys to build a local scene, and it's flourishing. It is flourishing. They have got some seriously good talent floating around, which is threatening, you know, because it's, what we don't need is just more talented people on the circuit. I can do without them.
Well, I won't tell you then that this podcast, The School of Hard Knock Knocks, is actually just a front for our stand-up comedy school, which develops stand-up comedians to compete against you. So I won't tell you that.
No, don't tell me that. Don't tell me that.
Sorry.
No, well, it was always going to happen.
I think you've got a pretty established career. It's a pretty high barrier to entry to try and compete against you on stand-up or books or, of course, TV. Just going back to Singapore for a moment, Blue Jazz, that's one of the little iconic clubs.
Yeah, done that. Worked with Blue Jazz a couple of times. It's a great room.
It is, yeah. Samuel C., S-E-E.
Yep.
You may know him, little short guy with a bow tie.
Yep, I know Sam, yep, absolutely.
Excellent. We've interviewed him. I think he might have been number 3 in this podcast. I know him well.
Yeah, no, he's a good guy. He's one of them. There's a lot of great talent floating around in that part of the world now. They've got a very established Singapore Comedy Festival now, and it's going from strength to strength. And it's surprising that people often say, you know, so I assume you're playing to an expat audience, and not so. It's
no.
There's the local audiences are far savvier, and English is no problem. That's what I find so embarrassing is that. You go to work in places like Singapore or KL, and you find that the other comics all naturally speak half a dozen languages, and I'm struggling with the one. You know, we really are. We suffer from our isolation down here a little bit in that regard, and I would encourage anybody who to learn, especially a second Asian language if you can. Obviously, the obvious choice would be Cantonese or Mandarin, but get something under your belt. I wish if I had my time again, I would have learned a second language. Absolutely, considering my parents both spoke 3 each or 4 each or whatever it was.
Well, being European, I guess. That's a prerequisite. Well, excellent. Well, I won't tell you that I speak Mandarin then.
No.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, looking back at your history, I want to know if you've got a few questions, and we'll obviously be talking about your comedy, and we'll talk about sort of advice. People that listen to this podcast are up-and-coming comedians, people who are looking for some advice, and we'll get to that in a minute. But were you an artist, as in a drawing, painting artist, before you were a comedian? How did that? What's the order?
I think. I'd worked. I sold my first cartoon. I think it was to People magazine or Post People magazine. I think it was when I was still at school. So I'd always drawn. I'd always, but never with any great success. It was always just a hobby that I had. That I just like to draw. I like to have a pen in my hand and carry a sketchbook around. And it wasn't. And then when I started to do comedy in the late 80s, I realised by the sort of early 90s I had an enormous amount of free time because I'd given up full-time, quote-unquote, real work. Mm-hmm. And so I put my hand up and tried to get into the National Art School, which I was lucky enough to be accepted for, and spent 3 years at art school, which was fantastic, and I recommend it to anybody. It's a terrific time to spend just allowing yourself to indulge the idea that you're creative and having people around you who support that idea.
Yep.
It's notorious out in the real world where people go, I'm a comic. They go, well, at places like the National Art School, it is considered a real job. And it's that sort of enthusiastic support of your endeavours, which is really beneficial, I think. And since art school, and I left art school, 22 years ago now, 20, yeah. I've had exhibitions. I still sell work. I still sell work today. I've yet to crack the major collectible market, but then I'm happy making images that people like. So I've so far avoided having to get a job in the real world, but I'm open to offers.
Okay. Well, so if there's an accounting firm out there that's looking for an entry level,
absolutely.
Yeah. All right.
Absolutely. I'll do anything.
The year that Hey It's Saturday said, we'd like you on our show.
Wow.
Where were you when that phone call came through? Obviously not an email, but...
Oh, I couldn't tell you. I don't know. I don't know. 91 maybe, 91. We did start to do Vizard. You started to do Hey. You did a midday show. There was opportunities back then for comics to do 3 minutes on national television as a comic.
Right.
And sort of emulating that Tonight Show format, where you Steve Vizard would go, ladies and gentlemen, comedian, bang, and you'd step up and you do your 3 minutes. Hey did it as well. And that was in the sort of glory days for us. And then we were lucky enough, I was certainly lucky enough to be a part of the first incarnation of Good News Week, which was also in the mid-90s, which gave comedians a chance to be more than just a 3 minute stand-up act. You could actually sit at a table and show off that you actually could... You were actually quite witty and charming and
yes.
TV friendly, and you could do more than just your 3 minute act. So that was that gave birth to a lot. Good News Week should take full credit for the launching of a lot of people on the Australian landscape. If you look back through their guest list, pretty much every comic who nobody knew, who people now know, came through that experience. But when you get the phone call, I remember getting the phone call to be on Vizard. That was a bit of a that was a bonus, because you feel that that was for a comic, and in the late 80s and early 90s, there was no comedy industry like there is now. There was no formal structure around it. There were no agents. There wasn't. Comics didn't turn up with a plan. Like nowadays, a lot of the young comics you see have these, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to go and do that, then I'm going to do a couple of festival shows, then before you know it, I'll be sitting on the project. They have a plan.
Yeah,
Whereas when I was doing it with a whole lot of mates, it was really just a whole lot of dysfunctional people hanging out together at night with no plan other than the next gig. So when you got a phone call to do a bit of TV, it was a bit of a coup. It was good fun. And a few of us got to do it before those shows folded, which was a real shame. And we don't have anything like that anymore.
Yeah. Well, you started, going back a slight step, dysfunctional. I don't think anything's changed there. There's plenty of dysfunctional comedians.
Yeah, a lot of dysfunction. Sitting
on the steps, having a smoke and with no plans. Nothing's changed there. But I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. So the Backberner. So people who know Peter Berner may know him less as a stand-up comedian, more of a TV host, because Backberner did some great things. We're talking 90s, aren't we? 2000s?
Yeah, 99, 2000.
Yeah.
It was 3 years. Started in 2000, I think, or 99, one of those two.
Yeah, and I'm looking back and doing the research on and looking at the topics that you covered. I just picked out one from 2001. Backberner covered on that program, refugees, corporate scandals, unions, the threat of an arms race with a rogue nation, crazy American president, China, and global instability. That's 2001. Nothing's changed.
Yeah.
That was the project show a couple of days ago.
Nothing's changed. No, that's right. You learn that it's really just the same news happening to other people.
Yep.
And that's one thing that saddens me greatly as I look at the landscape today, and I see these shows doing these pieces. I feel like rushing to the archive and going, look, we were doing it 17 years ago,
yep.
and I'm sure there were satires doing it 17 years before us. No one, nothing. We haven't. It's a shame to think we haven't moved 1 inch. I'm sure we have, but when you read that back to me now, it's satirical in itself to replay something from 17 years ago and it be so on the money today. There's something troubling about that.
Yeah.
Funny, but troubling.
Yeah, so that's a warning to you writers who are listening to this podcast. Guys, you got to lift the game. We've seen through your ruse.
Lift your game.
Yeah, you just
done it all before, mate.
Exactly. They're just going through old VHS tapes of your show on the Project and the Weekly.
Yeah. Absolutely. It wouldn't surprise me one bit. I mean, that's, I'm sure we're a masterclass. It was good fun, though.
Oh, that's right. Well, so I've jumped around a bit, but it seemed like the appropriate time to get into TV. And let's keep with the TV topic for a moment. You've done a fair bit of hosting. You've been obviously a Good News Week. You've been one of the hostees, one of the panelists, but you do a lot of hosting. The Einstein Factor. You have been watching, and most recently Sky TV's The B Team with you, Peter Berner. Now, obviously, all these things have gone. They're not still running, and the B Team wrapped up November last year. I've got a question about how do you go from stand-up to exactly that, hosting a satire or news satire program?
Yep.
What's the jump? And obviously, it's not A to B.
It's not. It's for me, the journey was I was involved in the Melbourne Comedy Festival in 1999. And two comics that I know, a producer called Jim Burnett and a comic called Graham Pugh, were commissioned to create a show. There was a couple of shows being pitched at the ABC, and the company was Crackerjack, which has become since been sold and resold in his shine, and it's the Fantasy Brothers. They commissioned Jim and Graham to sort of conceive a show that they might pitch at the ABC. Yep. And then Jim rang me and said, "What are you doing? Do you want to come and help write and create this thing?" And I went, "Yeah, sure, work." And so I sat at their feet and we sat in rooms and worked that up. And then they were looking for a host. And Jim said, "Well, use this guy. I mean, he's got all the skills." Jim's always been a bit of a fan of mine. And I love him. Yeah. And that's what it comes. And then they said, well, we've got to audition a few people, and they auditioned me, and they gave me the gig, and the name seemed to fit around the idea of the show, and it looked good on the title, and I was lucky enough to be given the nod, and that's how I went from panel comedian on Good News Week and jobbing comic around clubs to being sort of a television show. A lot of it comes down to right place, right time,
right surname.
Yeah, right surname. Yeah, fits the bill.
Yeah, Berner, B-U-R, B-E-R.
Exactly, works.
Perfect.
Because people in charge of television, they need things simply like that. That for them is creative genius, so they're happy to take that. So that's for me. It was that. It was an exercise in being part of the conception of the show, and then sort of being promoted to the host. And I think for the producers, they sort of go, well, we're getting a writer and a host for the cost of a writer. So that worked for them, and it became successful. And it was also the very right time for a show like that. And we had a really clever team of writers and presenters, and the show was a little different to anything that had been done before. It was a really unique. They do it a little bit now. I mean, the Daily Show. I'm not suggesting that but that idea of interviewing people who represent but aren't from that, like the comic interview. I mean, they've been done before. The two Ronnies have done them. They're an old thing, but we were doing them in that world of satire, and you see it now being mimicked across other shows or other shows using that device. We were just, at that time in the late 90s, a suit and tie satire around particularly the politics of the day. Yeah. The ABC was the perfect market for that, and they ate it up, and it did really, really well. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, Mad as Hell probably is the closest to that these days, but they probably go a little bit step further.
Yeah, they even go further. They go into that surreal world that Sean occupies.
He does,
but they go to that complete sort of lunatic, that sort of complete, that surreal fringe.
Bring out the Kraken. Yeah, absolutely. So Backberner, so we all know you as Peter Berner from Backberner, hence the title, The Einstein Factor. Now, I might have been away overseas during the period. How long did that run? 6 years or so?
6 years, yeah. It was a surprisingly successful show. I mean, not surprisingly, it had wonderful talent and it was a terrifically presented show. It went for 6 years. And you never know. Well, I certainly never know when I begin these projects whether they're going to last past the first commissioned set of episodes, but that one seemed to be recommissioned, and if I could, if I had hindsight, if I knew then what I know now, I would have rushed out and and invested in real estate or bought a fast car or something, because I never know when the gig's going to end, so I never trust to rush out and start splashing cash around like I'm an Arab sheik. So
yeah, right. So you've just got a big bank account instead.
Yeah, I wish that's but it was 6 years. Yeah, it was fun.
Oh, that's good. And then another program. This one I'm not very familiar with. You have been watching. What was that one about?
Yeah, that was a fun thing. One series thing. I can't remember how many eps we did. Maybe 6 or 8.
Okay.
Eps for the Comedy Channel. It was based on a show out of the UK that basically reviewed TV shows and went back through the archive and the vault, and we made fun of. And we had some guests on to chat about different TV shows. I wrote that one with Richard Thorpe and Steve Walsh was one of the writers, I think, on that. And that went. And the problem with that show, it ended up. I think it's just really time consuming because there's a lot of legals about using clips from different shows and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, and it's a funny idea, but it gets hamstrung by the legals that you got to jump through, and the networks just sort of go, look, it was fun once, but we haven't got the budget to do it again.
Yeah.
Which was a shame, because that was a fun show.
Yeah, right. And then the most recently, you had Sky TV's The B-Team with Peter Berner, which was back to news again.
It was back to news, back to digging through old Backberner scripts looking for the same jokes about unions.
Yeah, right. That's
and crazy presidents. It's that was fun too. That was a great opportunity. That was born. That came out of I still do occasionally drop in on Paul Murray's show on Sky, and he's a mate of mine, and they liked what I did on that, and they said, look, come and do this. And it started out as one night a week, then they made it 2 nights a week. But as always is the case, especially with a news service, it was a brand new idea for them. Normally they present news, commentary on news and breaking news. So for us, for those 2 hours a week, it was a real departure from their standard stock in trade. And, after 12 months, they said, look, that's enough for us for the moment. Let's review it next year. Let's sit down and chat. Yep. Maybe there's other opportunities. And that's where we are at the moment. With everything in this business, you spend your life having meetings and discussing pitches and refining proposals, and then you wait for them to have their, a lot of it in this business. And the business has changed a lot in that with the advent of new media and new technologies, TV stations are trying to recut the cloth where they once ruled the world. Yep. They don't rule the world so much anymore. No. And there's a lot of different, once upon a time there was four networks. Now there's multi-streaming, there's Netflix, there's specials, there's YouTube, there's podcasting. There's a whole lot of things nibbling away at their autonomy. So you have an idea, and I remember going to pitch ideas at Channel 9, and one of the most honest responses they ever got was they said, Pete, these are great ideas. The problem we have is that they can be recorded and watched later. And then it's sort of, that's the light bulb moment where you go, well, what TV stations need is in order to at least get the advertisers to pay the money, is they need to guarantee an audience in front of the box. Yep. In real time
at that moment.
Yeah, otherwise I'm gonna. It's a terrific comedy show. It can be recorded, and we skip the ads.
Yeah.
So those reality shows like Chefs and building things and people losing weight. If you want to be part of the now ubiquitous social media discussion, or you want to hashtag through the show, you've got to physically watch the show, which means you've got to watch the ads also, which means branded content and all of that becomes king. And that's that's the only thing I think they can rely on, which is why you'll see those shows like MasterChef part of the schedule for years to come.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you can come up with the profession that has yet to be mined by television for a reality series, you'll be a millionaire. But it's hard because most of them, everything's been done.
Yeah, right. Well, I won't mention then my interest in turning the School of Hard Knocks stand-up comedy school into a reality show. But maybe that's something we'll talk off air about.
It's absolutely. Look, that's not the first. You're not the first person to ever have sort of suggested that. And it's funny. I had one of those great light bulb moments years ago at Channel 9 when we were. Or it wasn't even at 9. It was the independent producer who'd worked at 9 and chat and all that. And we were speaking about the success of The Block.
Yeah.
And he said the thing about The Block is at the time they commissioned The Block, there were about half a dozen or more formats floating around the idea of renovating. and it just, theirs ticked the right boxes, was in the right place at the right time, had the right vibe about it, and that one was picked out of the pile, So that idea of the gestalt, that idea of your idea being out there and 3 or 4 people are pitching similar versions or variants of it, that's television. I've certainly learnt that, and I've had ideas where I've pitched an idea and a very similar show gets launched through another production company, and I went, well, it's not that no one's nicking ideas, it's just they're all out there being chewed on all the time.
That's right. Well, look at Hollywood. There seems to be 2 blockbusters come out. It's the end of the world theme. There'll be 2 movies about the end of the world, or
absolutely,
2 movies about talking animals.
Two magic. I remember when the Prestige came out with Hugh Jackman, and something else came. The Magician came out, and it's just they get on a flavour. Yeah. Zombies, they get on a flavour. Witches, they get on a flavour. All of that. Singing animals, they're on a flavour. Absolutely, and it's it just goes to show you that there are no new ideas. It's just how you fashion the idea.
Yeah, absolutely. No new ideas, and makes it tough for comedians who have to get up on stage and make people laugh, and then not get criticised for stealing other people's jokes. Which
and it gets harder. It's harder now because you're competing with social media. Yeah, and when I started, you just had to be funnier than the guy before you and the guy after you. Yeah. Now, People are. Everyone's a comic savant. Everyone's a critic. Everyone sits at home with YouTube and Netflix and Twitter and if you've got, I think you've got to be sure in yourself that when you stand up and do your bit, that you wrote it. Now, if someone else has done that bit as well, and someone goes, so and so in England did that and tweeted it 19 hours ago, well, I can't be across everything, mate.
Yeah, that's true.
I can only defend that I thought of it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's getting harder and harder. And he who has the biggest profile gets the credit for creating the bit. That's always been the way, though. There's a lot of great comics that have, that don't get named, who would go to, out of the way clubs, and next minute they're on the Carson show doing the bit, and the poor old comic in Arizona is going, but that's my bit. He was here last week, but he's bigger than you, mate.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the price.
That reminds me exactly of a point on, and it's very topical. There was a bit of a discussion about who came up with the idea for May 8 being the new Australia Day, because May 8. And it wasn't a few different comedians came out, but I think Jordan Raskopoulos was probably the first one to get it out there. But I know another well-known comedian who, on a separate channel, in separate social media, he had the same idea as well. And he actually realised that he might be accused. So he actually publicly said, "Oh, sorry, I had this idea as well, but go with Jordan. Great idea. She's got it. It's hers."
Yeah, no, you can't. I mean, you either got to be gracious, and there was a great quote years ago from, I think it was Leno, when someone asked Leno, "How do you deal with people that lift material?" And he just said, "Write faster than they can steal." And that's. But again, it all comes down to this social media phenomenon. A lot of people now get the joke out there, so they've got it time stamped. That's my joke. See, 11:18 p.m. That's
perfect.
And that's great. Look, at the end of the day, I've seen over the years, as I've walked into clubs, I've heard people doing same subject matter, similar jokes, all of that, and you think, oh well, you get irritated if it's a particularly good joke of yours you've written, and you think, no, that's mine, mate. What do you do? That's a perennial. That's a perennial bug for all comedians. How do you protect your material?
Yep.
How do you, without getting stroppy with everybody in every room that you ever work, or refusing to work unless every other comic leaves the room, and no one ever mentions what you've said to anybody?
Yeah.
You can't operate
it's
like that.
It's counterproductive, isn't it?
You've got to trust the integrity of the people you're working with, that's all.
Yeah.
You've got to hope that the majority of people working the scene are playing by the same rules.
Yeah, absolutely. People know you as a host, but obviously a very seasoned stand-up comedian. You've done Melbourne International Comedy Festival, late 90s, Sydney, Adelaide, I assume, Adelaide Fringe.
Yep.
Did you get out as far as Perth?
Adelaide. I have done Perth. In fact, I was doing Perth. I had to get pulled out of the Perth dates because Backberner was commissioned. So I have done
good
Perth.
problem.
And, I've done Brisbane. I even did New Zealand many years ago. So, yeah.
And so jonglers?
I've done jonglers, yeah. I got to do jonglers.
Yeah.
I've even done a couple of drop-in dates in New York just for the thrill of working in the Big Apple.
Yeah.
So look, yeah, I've been lucky. I've been very lucky for a man who's notoriously lazy. I've been very lucky.
Oh well, there you go. Well, what for those other notoriously lazy comedians that are up and coming? What advice would you give to them, based on your background?
Oh, I think it's keep doing stand-up if it's what you really love. I mean, I made the mistake, I guess, if I was to be critical of myself, is when I started to do a bit of TV and then radio work, you sort of get, it's not that fire goes out, but other things get in the way and you don't find yourself making it down to a club to do 5 and you think, oh, I'll do it next week, I'll do it the week after. And
right.
And it's a shame because that is the one thing. And I'm back doing it now. I still do it. And I'm doing some Sydney Festival dates. I'm not going to make $1 million, but I enjoy doing it. It gives me a great thrill. And don't lose the passion for stand-up because ultimately everything you do benefits from what you do in front of a live crowd. You cannot beat it.
Yep.
As a school of hard knocks, you cannot beat that being in front of a crowd and finding out right then and there whether the bit works, whether the bit doesn't, what you got to do to fix it.
Yeah.
All of that. You can't do it into a mirror in your hairbrush, and it's not the same.
No, I imagine not. But, you just mentioned there that you're going down the Sydney Comedy Festival. Is that right? My understanding, or was that Sydney? So, with that in mind, what have you got? So, we know that you're not going to be immediately back on Sky in the short term. I believe there's a few discussions going on, and
yep.
We won't go there, but where can someone see you, or how does someone get in contact with you if they want to book you? Because I know you do quite a fair bit of hosting and emceeing as well, don't you?
I do. PeterBerner.com. Everyone's got a .com. PeterBerner.com is the simplest place to find me. You can contact me through that. But I tend to pop up on a bit of TV still. I still do some mid-morning stuff, on Studio 10s. I drop in on that. That's a good crowd of people there and have some fun there. I still drop in on when Paul's back. Hopefully Paul will have me on a few times. And, yeah, you spend your whole life negotiating and fine-tuning ideas and repitching ideas to networks in the hope that someone goes, yes, let's give that a shot. But it's a cutthroat business. There's a lot of people doing that now.
Yeah, but not all of them have a great surname that, can fit into a groovy title.
That's right. Yeah. I've got to capitalise.
You do.
So that's pretty much in this business. You gather your crumbs together and try and make a meal out of them, and that's really the nature. And some years you get luckier than other years.
Perfect. So if they want to contact you, Peter Berner, that's Berner, not you, as the parody of the Backberner TV show was all about. .com, no AU, I assume?
No AU. No, I scored me. I got my own name. I don't know how. I must have got in early.
Yeah, all those Danish people are going, damn you.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're saying.
Yeah, in that accent. Well, thanks, Peter. I'll be following your career, waiting to see you pop up again on my television, or maybe at the local comedy room. Somewhere down, I'm in Melbourne, but when you're down here, are you coming down for Melbourne International Comedy Festival?
Oh, I'm actually in Melbourne at the Comics Lounge in about in 2 weeks, at the beginning of Feb. So I'm there for a week, or for whatever
Excellent.
A week constitutes, 4 or 5 days. So that's good. Yeah, looking forward to it. I love it. It's good. It's a game.
Well, Peter, thanks very much for your time today. It's been good to catch up and find out a little bit about how you went from Singapore to Sydney, and from doing cartoons and having your own books, I should add. We didn't go there too far, but writing cartoon books, excellent, to having your own TV show. So thanks again.
No worries, Maurice. My pleasure.
Great. Thanks.